Brennan Othmann scuffles badly and gets a game misconduct against the Devils. We tell you if Ranger fans should be panicking about the former first-round pick.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1385 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, and we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the Rangers open the preseason at long last. It is here. It is preseason hockey, but it is New York Ranger hockey nevertheless. And this is obviously a very exciting time for all of us Ranger fans everywhere. And there's plenty of good news in this game, not the least of which is the very simple fact that the Rangers beat the Devils 5-3. Yes, it's the preseason. Never too early, though, to say that the Rangers beat the Devils. And they outplayed them. And I think certainly it was a fair result based on the flow of the game and just the fact that the Rangers, again, seem to have the upper hand for the majority of the night. But one of the biggest talking points to come out of this game and one of the biggest issues, raised among Ranger fan was the play of Brennan Othmann. Now, let me say right off the bat here, I thought Othmann really looked good in that two-game rookie series against the Flyers, and I know a lot of people are going to sort of downplay that because he's going up against guys that have less NHL experience than he has, but Othmann himself only has 25 games. Be that as it may, we're up to kind of the next level of hockey here. We go from those rookie games to now, the preseason, where you're going to get a mix of some NHL veterans and some young guys such as Brennan Othmann and a lot of other players on this Ranger roster and the Devils roster too, for that matter. They're trying to carve out a role for themselves, make the team, and make a good impression on their respective teams. Brennan Othmann did not play well at all in this game. And again, there was plenty of good stuff for the Rangers. We'll get to that very shortly. But again, Othmann was kind of the talking point here because he's trying to make this team, and he is a former first rounder. And I think people are getting to the point where they're looking to see better play than what we got from Brennan Othmann in this game. But we'll go through a couple of his highlights. I mean, I don't know if that's really the appropriate name for this, but he struggled quite a bit. We had a situation where he had a very good chance to score early in this game. The Rangers had a power play. He had a situation where Dylan Robrick was moving to his right toward the center of the ice in the offensive zone, and you're thinking maybe he's going to shoot. Instead, he kind of draws the defenders toward him. They start to converge on Robrick a little bit, and then he makes a pass to the right circle to Brennan Othmann. Now, Othmann has got all kinds of time and space to work with here. You think maybe he's going to unleash a quick shot, or maybe he'll move a little bit closer to the net and then shoot or make an extra pass, whatever it might be. He didn't get to do any of that, though, because he fumbled the puck. And he did eventually get it back before the Devils could get there. But by then, it's too late. I mean, you guys know just as well as I do that those scoring chances, those little windows that open up, they close very quickly in the NHL. And Othmann, fumbling a pretty easy pass here. That was not good, obviously, and nullified a pretty good scoring chance for the Rangers there. Then he had a situation in the second period, and this was right after Dylan Garand came into the game in relief of Jonathan Quick. And I thought the two of them both played quite well in this game. But yet Othmann fanning on a clearing attempt in the defensive zone. And then he eventually got the handle of the puck and he moved it into the neutral zone and basically just gave it away to the Devils. And then this is probably the worst play of all of them. You have a situation where the Devils scored on the rush directly off of a Brennan Othmann turnover. Othmann had the puck. He's going through the neutral zone. He gets the blue line. He's into the attacking zone. He stops, turns along the boards there, and looks to make a pass to the center of the ice, which, okay, I mean, that's not, I feel like he probably could have kept going there, but it's not the worst thing you can do. Unfortunately, he takes a hit, and his pass gets deflected, and the Devils pick it up. They go the other way, and they are able to score on a rush here. That cut the Ranger lead from 4-2, but obviously not good. The one thing I'll say in defense of Othmann in this situation here is that it did look like he was hurting. When he took the hit, his hand kind of got caught between his opponent and the glass there, and seemed to be favoring his hand as he went toward the bench. But even still, this was not obviously a banner play for Brennan Othmann. And then the thing that really got everybody talking, the cherry on the bleep Sunday, if you will, is the hit that he put on Addison toward the end of this game. Basically, you have a situation where the puck is in the corner, Rangers are in the offensive zone, and he comes along, Addison gets control of the puck, and Othmann pretty much puts his shoulder right into Addison's head, his jaw, whatever it was, and the penalty is called. It's a 5-minute major. The whistle eventually blows, and that's when we get the big-time scrum there. Othmann ends up getting a 5-minute major for elbowing. I don't think it was an elbow, but it was shoulder to the head. And as far as whether or not this deserved to be a 5-minute major, whether or not this deserved to be a game misconduct, I have to kind of agree with the NHL's ruling on this, that both of those things were warranted in this situation. I've gotten to the point, I've talked about this in the past, but it's been a while because we haven't had any games in a while. But I've gotten to the point where it's very difficult for me to judge these because I just feel like, whether it's a clean hit or a dirty hit or whatever it might be, no two of these plays are ever exactly the same. And then you've got situations here where it looks really bad, especially when you put it in slow motion. Looks like Othmann targeted the head. But then you also notice that the Devil, Addison, at the last minute, he did kind of lower his head a little bit because he was trying to play the puck. So was Othmann going to get him in the chest? And then instead he got him in the head because, Addison just happened to lower his head at the worst moment. And then you have situations where, that guy, his skates are off the ice. And it's like, well, his skates are off the ice, but that might just be on the follow through of the hit. I've gotten almost like numb to these plays where it's difficult to call it, whether it's clean or dirty. But obviously this looked really bad here. And the thing that I really don't like about this, actually, there's two things. First of all, he almost got his teammate killed. I mean, yes, he put the big hit on Addison, but if you notice, he gets him shoulder to head on Addison, and then Addison, his head kind of snaps back, right? And Taylor Radish is there. He's behind Addison, and Addison's helmet pretty much caught Radish in the jaw. I mean, we're really lucky. Radish specifically is lucky that nothing seemed to come of that. I mean, he seemed to shake it off, but that was a kind of a dangerous play there for Radish as well. We don't need to be losing guys. They're probably going to be out there on opening night in the first preseason game. So Radish kind of dodged a little bit of a difficult situation there. And, obviously he was no worse for wear. I don't think he came out of the game or wasn't mentioned to be injured at the end of the game or anything along those lines. So that's obviously very fortunate, but he almost got his teammate there. So that would not have been good, obviously. And the other thing I don't like about this is the situation in which it happened in the game. The Rangers are up 5-2. There's 3:30 left when this happens. And I understand Othmann is trying to make this Ranger team. He's trying to turn some heads. He's trying to get some attention. He's trying to put some good hockey on tape. He wants to be out there on opening night in a prominent role for the New York Rangers. So I can understand it to that degree. But think about this. Again, 3-goal lead. Time is running out. Just make simple, smart defensive plays. Gain the red line, dump the puck into the offensive zone, go off for a line change, and basically call it a shift. That's basically all you have to do by this point in the game. But instead, Othmann goes in there and just tattoos his guy on what was a questionable hit at best and gets a 5-minute major penalty for it. Now, the Devils are on the power play for the rest of this game, 3:30. Whatever, minuscule chance they have of winning the game is basically what Brennan Othmann just gave to them. And they did end up scoring a goal during this 5-minute major penalty. They ended up with a 5-on-3. I like to think that if this is a regular season game and, say the Rangers are only up by 1 instead of 3, that Othmann would be smart enough not to do this, not to put his team in such a compromising situation, such a uphill battle to the end of the game. I mean, you're trying to grind out the clock. Just, again, play smart defensive hockey. There's no reason to go for, basically this home run kind of a hit on somebody that, again, questionable at best if we're talking about it being clean versus being dirty. So that bothered me too. I just didn't like the time in which this happened during the game. Again, I would hope that in the regular season, he would be a little bit smarter about this, but it's hard to say for sure. And here's the other thing I'll say about Othmann and his early struggles here. And it's just one game, really. Again, he played well in the rookie series, and they've had him in a prominent role in camp and whatnot. So everything has mostly been positive for Othmann before this game, but this was a shaky performance for sure. I feel like part of the reason why there's some heat coming from Ranger fans on Brennan Othmann right now is because we've kind of been through this song and dance before, right? Here's all the things that you could say in defense of Othmann, as far as if you want to stay positive about this. You could say that he's only 22 years old. That is true. You can say he's only played 25 career NHL games. Also true. You can say when he has played in the NHL, he's had very little ice time, and he's always been in a bottom 6 role, and he's never been out there with, the better scorers, just the better players for the Rangers. That stuff is all true. He's gotten no time on the power play. That's true as well. He's been productive at every other level of hockey. That is also true. These are all things you can say in defense of Brennan Othmann, but doesn't this all sound a little too familiar? Haven't we heard these things before with other Ranger players like Lafreniere, like Capo Caco, like Kravtsov, like Anderson, like a lot of different players that the Rangers have taken, early in the draft. Now, none of this is the fault of Brennan Othmann, and it doesn't mean that he's doomed to, underachieve for his NHL career, underachieve for his Ranger career. But I feel like, among the fan base, there is kind of that nervousness. There's that apprehension. Like, did we get the right guy here? Are we fumbling his development? What's going to happen with Brennan Othmann moving forward? I can understand a certain level of apprehension coming from the fan base, and I might have like a little touch of it as well, but I'm not there yet. I'm not there as far as throwing in the towel on the Brennan Othmann experiment or anything like that. Again, 25 games. I mean, it's the things I just listed a minute ago, right? All those things are true, and I think this year is going to be very telling, though. I'm not so sure it's like make or break, but you do want to see some noticeable improvement from Brennan Othmann. You want to see him do something positive at the NHL level, whether that's right at the start of the season, if and when he makes a team, or if he starts this season in the Wolfpack, whether that's a little bit further down the road once he gets called up, once the Rangers feel that he's dominated the AHL or they have a role for him or whatever the situation might be. But I think it's kind of that happy medium where it's not unfair to expect better play than this from Brennan Othmann, but it's also not time to throw out the dreaded B word and start calling him a bust this early in his NHL career. I can understand, both sides of it, but as is usually the case, I think the truth is somewhere in the middle, but he's somebody that's going to need to bounce back. He did apparently avoid a suspension for this hit. There was some talk, some worry that he was going to get suspended for this. Apparently, no such meeting. There was no, meeting with the Department of Player Safety or anything like that. So Othmann is good to go whenever they want to use him. And honestly, I would throw him right back out there in the next preseason game. I know there's going to be different players in and out of the lineup throughout the 6 preseason games, but I got to see more from Brennan Othmann. And, let's go ahead and give him a chance to redeem himself with a better game in the second game of the preseason. We'll see if that's what the Rangers do. But in just a second, we're going to keep everything rolling. We're going to talk about the line combinations in this game and also Conor Sheary. He was a standout in a positive way for the Rangers. We'll talk about his chances of making the team at the start of the season, and we'll do all that good stuff in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people cannot name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off of your first year. That's a 50% off for your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNHL. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. Big shout out to the everydayers. As always, thank you guys so much for continuing to support this podcast through all the ups, downs, the highs, the lows of New York Ranger hockey. Really does mean a lot. In our next episode, we're going to get to the best and worst case scenarios for a trio of Rangers who could very likely start this upcoming season on the fourth line together. That would be Adam Edstrom, Sam Carrick, and Matt Rempe. So we'll discuss that in tomorrow's episode. For right now, though, let's keep talking about this preseason win against the Devils, and let's get into some of the good stuff. To begin with, what I wanted to do was talk a little bit about the line combinations, the defense pairings. But the first thing that got my attention before the puck even dropped for this game is the players that were going to be taking the ice for the New York Rangers. Now, obviously, some of the big-time stars, the high-paid players, they were missing. They were not active for this game, which is fine. There's 6 games. They're going to obviously put them out there in a way that they feel is conducive to the Rangers starting the season well. But, you're not going to have established star players, former All-Stars playing all 6 games of the preseason. I think that's pretty obvious. But I did want to go ahead and share the preseason opening roster here for game 1. This is what we had to work with. There's the game group for Rangers versus Devils for anybody watching on YouTube. And if you're on audio, don't worry, I'll talk you through it. So basically, what really got my attention here is that this is a group of players that their fate has not really been sealed as far as who's going to be out there on opening night and who's going to be in the AHL or elsewhere to start this upcoming season. Because when you look at this group right here, how many of these players would you say are guaranteed to be on the opening night roster? I think there's two. I think you're looking at Will Borgen. He's obviously going to be there. So too is Jonathan Quick. Quick will be backing up Igor, but he will be out there on opening night. That is for sure. When you look at the rest of these names, I mean, is anybody else truly a lock to take the ice on opening night for the Rangers? If I was going to throw out a third name, I would probably say Taylor Radish. You know, they brought him in, I think, obviously with a bottom six role in mind for him. I wouldn't quite put him at 100%, maybe around like 90% for Radish to be out there on opening night. But then you've got a bunch of names, and there's guys, you know, with all different kinds of differences in terms of their playing experience in the NHL, and are they older? Are they younger? I mean, Brodzinski, that could go either way. You look at somebody like Noah Laba. If he has just an absolutely amazing rest of the preseason, then I think he would at least have a shot of making the opening night roster, but it does feel like a little bit of a long shot. Dylan Robrick is looking to turn some heads. Rempe, you know, they won't waive Rempe. That I don't think there's any chance of that happening, but it could go either way as far as whether he dresses on opening night or not, or whether he's a healthy scratch. Othmann, I mean, we just got done talking about him. That could go either way. Same thing with Gabe Perreault. And then you look at somebody like Eero Vakanainen. I mean, he'll, I think, at least be on the roster, but will he be dressed on opening night, or will he be a healthy scratch? That could go either way. Same thing with Scott Morrow. He could be sent down to the AHL. Connor Mackey, you know, maybe somebody like him has an outside chance of making the team as a number 7 defenseman. But again, that's what really caught my attention from this group is you've got an entire bunch of players here who, not the whole thing. You know, there's a couple guys that we penciled in for opening night, and there's a couple guys that won't be there. You know, maybe somebody like Kerry Terrence. But for the most part, you're talking about guys who their fate has not yet been sealed as far as whether they're on the Rangers or not. So that was already very intriguing. But then you get to the line combinations, and a top line trio of Conor Sheary, Juuso Parssinen, Gabe Perreault. They were responsible for the first goal of the game. Just a great offensive zone shift. These guys were buzzing. You had Gabe Perreault doing a nice job bodying his guy and knocking him off the puck and allowing the Rangers to maintain possession in the offensive zone. And Gabe Perreault is noticeably bigger. He's never going to be the biggest guy on the ice when he steps out there, but there were reports that he put on quite a bit of muscle in the offseason. It certainly does look that way. So that was a nice play, but the Rangers were buzzing. Casey Fitzgerald, who has been a standout for the Rangers in camp, he goes in deep around the corner with the puck, passes in front to Gabe Perreault. Perreault scores from the doorstep and beats the veteran Jake Allen. I still think the best place for Perreault at the start of the season is with the Hartford Wolfpack, but I'm always open to things. If Perreault wants to change all of our minds, or my mind at least, some of you might already think that Perreault should be out there on opening night, then I'm all eyes. Let's see what the kid can do, and hopefully he gets a decent amount of action in the preseason here. And Sheary was very good too. Going to talk about him a little bit more extensively in just a second. But the second line, Othmann, Dowling, and Radish, they didn't really stand out in any meaningful way for me. I mean, we talked about Othmann, and obviously he scuffled a little bit. Dowling is a long shot at best to make this Ranger roster, but he could be an NHL veteran on the Wolfpack this upcoming season, somebody that you can call up on an as-needed basis if you just need a veteran for a couple of games. And then you had Bleed, Laba, and Brodzinski. Brodzinski scored a goal. It was kind of a situation where he was in the right place at the right time, but he did a nice job anticipating the play, was able to sweep home a goal off of a rebound, so that was obviously nice to see. Then you had Aspinall, Robrick, and Rempe, absolute giants on the fourth line. Rempe was very good in this game. Rempe basically caused a goal to occur for the Rangers because he did a great job. I'm trying to think what period this was. I've got the box score in front of me here right now. But Rempe basically forced a turnover in the neutral zone and was able to get the puck, knock the puck ahead back into the Devil zone. The Devil defender was closer to the puck than Matt Rempe was. But Rempe didn't care. He went to the outside of the defender, powered his way past him, picked up the puck, went to the net, was not able to score, but the rebound was there. The puck was loose, and that's when Dylan Robrick crashed the net and gave the Rangers a 2-1 lead. And at that point, the Rangers were on top to stay. So Rempe did a great job there. They also had Rempe late in the game. Didn't really see this early in the game, but late in the game, the Rangers got a power play. Maybe about 6 minutes to go, give or take. And they did something that I've been talking about off and on throughout the entire offseason. They put Matt Rempe not only on the power play, but right in the role you would want him to be in on the power play. They parked him right in front of the goalie, and he actually had a couple of chances. There was one situation where somebody, I think it was Radish took a shot from the blue line, and I think was looking to set up Rempe for a deflection. Unfortunately, the shot never quite got there. Sheary had a chance from the slot that just went just wide as well. But there's Rempe, the tower that he is, screening the goalie and seemingly doing a pretty effective job of it. I would like to see more of this as the preseason continues here. It's food for thought. When you look at the Rangers' second power play unit, there's no obvious 5 players to fill out the entire unit. So if Rempe is kind of like your 10th of the 10 power play guys, and he's out there to screen the goalie on the second power play, I definitely don't hate that. I think it's an intriguing idea. I think that's something that's at least worth a look here in the preseason. And for what it's worth, Mike Sullivan spoke very, very highly of Matt Rempe after this game. He was very impressed with how he played, as I was, and I'm sure some of you were as well. Then we get to the defensemen, Vakanainen and Borgen. This is interesting because we haven't really seen these two guys play together all that often. I mean, I guess it could be a pairing, but I don't see Borgen being out of the top 4, and I don't see Vakanainen joining the top 4. Like, if Vakanainen's in the lineup, then I think he's going to be out there probably on the 3rd pairing. And I see Vakanainen very likely opening the season as the 7th defenseman, while Scott Morrow slides in as the 6th defenseman. Then you had Mackey and Morrow. Mackey got into a fight in this game with Laguerre, and he won, landed some left hands. That was good to see for sure. Mackey is somebody that's played very sparingly for the Rangers the last couple of years, but he is a veteran with, some edge to his game. He's played 3 total games for the Rangers in the last 2 seasons and got into 2 fights. So he certainly will do that when the occasion calls for it. And then Pouliot and Fitzgerald. And as we mentioned before, Jonathan Quick and Dylan Garand splitting reps between the pipes. And I thought both of them played quite well. But I wanted to talk a little bit more now about Conor Sheary and his chances of making this team. An expression that I've used, I don't know if other people say this or not, but I know that as fans, and certainly like the Ranger coaching staff, it doesn't have to even just be the Rangers. It could really be any team. You want to have that idea where every game is a big game, right? And every game is game 7 of the Stanley Cup final. But you also have to understand as a fan, I think, it's not possible to treat every single game like it's game 7 of the Stanley Cup final, because nobody will be left standing by the end of the season. We know once it gets to the playoffs, there is that little uptick, and there is a whole nother level that guys go to. But you know who it is game 7 for in the preseason? Somebody who's on a PTO. We saw this with Jimmy Vesey a couple of seasons ago. The Rangers brought him in on a PTO to not much fanfare. He played very, very well, was competing his tail off throughout the entire preseason, and obviously ended up spending a couple of seasons with the Rangers before being traded at last year's deadline. But now we've got Sheary in a very similar situation. This is somebody that's a proud veteran and obviously wants to keep playing in the NHL. There's some familiarity with Mike Sullivan. He's got a good chance, I think, to make the roster here. But again, for him, I mean, he wants to keep playing in the NHL, right? So he's going to be skating and competing his tail off in a game like this. And that's exactly what he did. Thought he played very well. He was also wearing an A in this game, although after the game was over, Mike Sullivan did indicate that the guys that were wearing the A's were just the guys that had the most NHL experience. On one hand, I kind of wish a little bit more thought went into it than that. But on the other hand, that's basically what teams are going to do anyway for preseason games like this. You're going to look to the veterans and slap the A on those players. And Sheary, again, overall, he played well in this game. He had a little bit of a hiccup early. He was pressured in his own zone by a forechecker from the Devils and ended up having to pull down his opponent to take a penalty and prevent a scoring chance, and obviously went to the penalty box. So that wasn't ideal. But he made a great play in the first period. It was getting late in the first. We're down to maybe like a minute or so to go. He clears the puck out of the Rangers zone. He chips it ahead to himself, like from the neutral zone into the offensive zone, and then wins the foot race to the puck. It becomes a little bit of a 50-50 puck. He was able to lift the stick of the defenseman, take the puck away, give the Rangers possession, and then he just missed scoring on a rebound later on in this shift. And then with about 5 seconds to go, he got another opportunity to take a shot, a pretty good shot at the net, and unfortunately was denied. So he looked really good. He also drew a tripping penalty late in this game as well. Sheary, I thought, really popped in. And for what it's worth, there was an interview after the game with Gabe Perreault, and he really spoke very highly of Conor Sheary. He said he was excited to play with him, really respects him, loved the way that he used to forecheck against the Penguins. Mentioned, did Perreault, that Sheary's the kind of player that, he would like to be like, obviously, with the strong forechecking tendencies. So all good stuff for Conor Sheary. And, it all leads you. We didn't even get to his goal, though. We have to talk about this. Vakanainen made a nice defensive play in the neutral zone, basically stood up his guy. Juuso Parson comes away with a steal, and then he passes ahead to Sheary to spring him on a breakaway. Sheary goes up the left side. You're thinking he's going to carry the puck in a little bit deeper, maybe make a couple, moves on the doorstep or wherever it might be. Instead, he just unleashes a really nasty top shelf snipe, and he scores. And obviously everything he does, not the least of which would be scoring goals, is going to affect, whether Sheary ends up making this team or not. But, regardless, again, I thought this was a solid showing. It's funny because when you look at the Ranger roster right now and you look at all the forwards and all these guys that are gunning for spots right now, it's kind of hard to come up with a spot for Conor Sheary, but I've been saying all along that I really do think that he's going to make this team. Right from the minute that he was signed to a PTO, it was just kind of a gut feeling that he would get there, that he would end up being, one of the guys on the opening night roster, possibly even in the lineup. We will see. And I realized that, some fans aren't going to be happy about that because it could come at the expense of guys like Othmann or Berard or Perreault. Those guys, one or two or all of them could end up starting in the AHL, and people are going to be like, oh my God, why are we bringing in a washed Conor Sheary instead of developing our prospects? You know what? It's fine. If Sheary earns himself a roster spot, it's fine. If you have to make a change during the season, if any of those guys, Perreault, Othmann, or Berard, if they start in the AHL and they outperform the expectations that are kind of set for them or meet the expectations that are set for them, then they can be called up, whenever the time is necessary. And if Sheary has to be the odd man out at that point, then so be it. But he did play well in this game. And again, it's just kind of a gut feeling. Can't really explain it, but even though it's hard to kind of figure out exactly where he fits in the lineup, I still feel like Sheary's going to basically force his way onto this Ranger roster at the start of the season. He was very, very good in this game. And I'll leave you with a quote from Mike Sullivan, what he had to say about Sheary after the game. I thought Conor had a terrific game. I thought his whole line played well. I thought he did a lot of the little things, just putting pucks behind their D, chasing pucks down, creating turnovers. Yeah, he looked like he was fired out of a cannon. So very, very strong showing for Sheary thus far, and we'll see how it goes. I would imagine he's another player that will get probably at least 4 games in the preseason. Because again, it could go either way here, right? So you got to give the guy the opportunity to carve out a role for himself on the opening night roster, depending on how he does in the preseason. But in just a second, the Rangers recently cut 13 players from their current roster, where I discussed that. And if there were any surprises in that bunch as well, we will do that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel is the best because it will fit however you'd like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action is unfolding. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It is quick, it is easy, and it is the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers by talking about some recent roster cuts. 13 players to be exact. And, you hear that number and it feels a little overwhelming. It's like, oh my God, like what did they do here? There's nothing really all that surprising about the 13 players that they cut, but I still wanted to bring this up, give all these guys a fair trial. I mean, we're not going to talk at length about all 13 of them, but we'll have our thoughts as far as the players that are no longer in Ranger camp. To begin with, again, 13 players, 8 of them were assigned to Wolfpack training camp. They are on Wolfpack contracts. You've got Gavin Hayne, Kyle Jackson, Zachary Karpa, Sullivan Mack, Chris Mercier, Ortiz, probably not pronouncing that correctly, so I apologize there. Cooper Moore, Hugo Olas, and Callum Tung. And if there is a surprise from this group of 8, I would say maybe Olas, just because, he did compete in the Rangers Flyers rookie series, and I thought he did, pretty well in that competition. And, maybe with there being 6 preseason games, you'd see a situation where he'd get half of one of the games. We saw in this preseason opener against the Devils, Jonathan Quick and Dylan Garand split the game pretty much 50-50, and that was obviously the plan going into it. I thought maybe Olas would get a look for, half of one of these games, but at the same time, the Rangers have 4 goalies in camp right now. They need to get these guys ready. I mean, those 4 goalies, Igor, Quick, Garand, and Boyko, there we go, Boyko, those are the 4 that are going to take the highest priority. Those are the ones that this team has to get ready for the start of the season. Those are the guys that are going to be called upon, obviously with Igor and Quick for the Rangers, and you're probably looking at, Boyko and Garand. Garand will be the starter. Boyko will back him up with the Hartford Wolfpack. So you can understand why they are now down to just 4 goalies in camp. Then you had 2 players that were released from tryouts. You had Tim Lovell and Corbin Vaughn. Vaughn, was throwing his weight around in the rookie series against the Flyers, and he got into a couple of fights in one of those games as well. But, he only dressed for one of the 2 games against the Flyers, so I don't think the Rangers had any grand plans for Corbin Vaughn, but it is what it is. There's only so many spots to go around, and those 2 players have now been released from their tryouts. And then you had 3 players that were released, not released. They were cut, but they were assigned to their respective junior teams. They are Raul Boyard, Artem Gonchar, and Evan Passmore. They all return to their respective junior teams. Boyard, he looked pretty good in the rookie series against the Flyers. 4th round forward in 2024. Since being cut, he has already played a game with Shawinigan. I'm sorry. I don't know the pronunciations of all these teams, but of the QMJHL, he's back in the QMJHL. Last season in the Q, he ended up with 12 goals, 34 assists for a total of 46 points. And, a player to watch for sure. Gonchar, he had an assist in the rookie series. He's a 3rd rounder in this year's class. He and Passmore are they are the only 2 players from this year's draft class to compete in that rookie series. But, I think the feeling from the Rangers right now, and I would certainly agree, is that these guys are not even close to being ready for NHL hockey. And with that being the case, it's better to just get them back to their junior teams and, let them go to work there. Gonchar did have an assist in the rookie series, like I mentioned. He's one of the only smaller players that the Rangers drafted this year. He is at 6 feet tall, 157 pounds. So he's got a way to go. Again, I think the Rangers understand that. You got to figure he'll be looking to add some weight as the years go by here. He had 7 goals and 18 assists in the MHL this past season, and he just played his first game in the OHL with the Sudbury Wolves. And then you've got Evan Passmore. People really seem to like this pick by the Rangers, and not just because the name is perfect. Passmore playing with the New York Rangers, it could not fit any better. But he's a defenseman that was taken in the 6th round, absolute giant, 6'5", 212 pounds. Rangers like their 6th round giants. We've seen it over and over and over. And I do not dislike that strategy at all. I think by the time you get late in the draft, you might as well take somebody that's a giant with everything else being equal. It's a dart throw anyway. So you might as well take somebody that's got some size and an impressive frame. And he's back with the Barrie Colts of the OHL for his 3rd season there. Last season, 3 goals, 8 assists for 11 points in 62 games. So, I think, again, there's not really any surprises from this bunch. Not really. A couple of intriguing names to watch, but this is how it's going to go. They'll continue to thin out the herd as the preseason progresses here. A couple of guys will get maybe 1 appearance in NHL preseason game, and then, they'll head to the Wolfpack or whatever team that it might be at that point. But we'll call it there. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com, and definitely give us a follow on Twitter @jchick17. Thanks as always, and I will see you next time.